Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday evening. I'm Shweta. I represent GradSquare, and we have Varun Krishnan here, who is also a GradSquare mentor. Today's session is going to be in a collaboration with the DreamGood project. DreamGood project is basically an initiative which focuses on spreading awareness about diverse career opportunities in the field of public policy and helping students and aspirants achieve those career dreams, basically. And we have two esteemed guests with us today. One is Garima Rana. She is the founder of the DreamGood project. Welcome, Garima. A short introduction about our speaker for the day. So Garima, apart from founding the DreamGood project, she has also graduated with a Master in Public Policy from the University of Oxford with a fully funded Felix Scholarship. She received a BTech from Indira Gandhi Institute for Technology, Delhi, where she also received the GE Foundation Scholarship, and she was also placed on reserve list for UPSC Civil Services Examination in 2016. Garima is currently a manager at ID Insight based in New Delhi, where she works with several state governments on issues relating to child protection, maternal and child health. Prior to that, Garima has also been a part of several organizations, including Ashoka University. Thank you so much once again, Garima, for joining us today. We also have our guest speaker, Srishti Gupta, here with us today. Srishti is actually a civil servant, an IRTS officer in Indian Railways from the batch of 2014. She has also done her master's in public policy from University of Oxford and is also an alumnus of Hansraj College in Mumbai. After qualifying the UPSC Civil Services, she has served different roles in Mumbai division of Ministry of Railways, and she has also been leading several projects, and she was also the consultant for the World Bank. Once again, I'd like to thank both of you for being present here today. It's an honor to have you here with us. So over to you both.
Hello, thanks, Shweta. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Great. Thanks for that brief introduction, Shweta. What I'll do is I'll share my screen.
Yeah, you have the access to do that actually. Yeah, perfect.
Great. Can you see? Can everyone see my screen?
Your screen is still loading, Garima, and I think there's a bit of a disturbance in the voice, but I think that will sort itself out.
Yeah, I think I should have a steadier internet in like 3 minutes. Just please bear a little then.
Yeah, the screen is visible
now. If at any point I'm not audible, just feel free to flag that by unmuting yourselves or sending a chat. Varun and Shweta, can you hear me? Can we start now?
Yes, we can start.
Great. Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining us today. As Shweta mentioned, I am founder of the DreamGood project. And as part of this project, we aim to spread awareness about different career options and study abroad or degree options for people who want to have a thriving career in the development sector. So we map mentors such as Srishti, who's joined me today for the call, with young aspiring individuals like you who've joined the call, so that we can provide you personalized guidance on this. And today in this session, we will basically cover 3 key aspects. First, I'll give you some basic information about what are the different career options in public policy, or what we broadly call development sector. Second, I will talk about what are the different degrees which are available in India and abroad for you if you want to pursue a career in public policy. And thirdly, very briefly, I'll touch upon what kind of support we can provide you at the DreamGood project. So to begin with, I have a quick question for all of you. You can use the chat box to send your responses, or you can unmute yourself. You can raise your hand and unmute yourself to say this. But the question is like, what comes to your mind? Maybe what visual comes to your mind when you think about development sector jobs, or what we broadly call like, doing good careers where you're trying to help people, and you're trying to serve the community, or you're trying to serve the society. What really comes to your mind when you think about these careers? Feel free to raise your hand or drop a message in the debate. Anyone else? Is my voice still breaking up?
Yeah, there's a bit of a disturbance, Garima. I think the net is a bit unstable. Guys, seems like there's a small technical issue. We will start in 5 minutes. Garima, you can once disconnect and reconnect. Yeah, yeah, Garima, you can just disconnect and you can go on to a different connection and reconnect. Okay, we'll start in 2 minutes. Restart in 2 minutes.
Hello. Varun and Shweta, am I audible now?
Yes, yes, Garima, you're on.
Great, awesome, amazing. I'm guessing everyone was waiting when I was trying to connect. Let me just share my screen again.
Sure.
Super. So while I'm sharing my screen, the question that I was trying to ask everyone is that when you think about careers in development sector, what comes to your mind? Like maybe a visual or an example. You can use the chat box to drop your responses. I remember Paritosh had mentioned lots of debating. Or if you have an example in mind of what a job in development sector looks like, that's you can also mention that. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Great. So I guess a lot of you might have heard about the Jhola Walas, or you might have also heard about civil servants, the Sarkari Babus. Anybody with a show of hands has heard about these things? So one of the like key things that we wanted to share today in today's session is that I mean, the sector is not really about the Jhola Walas like you see in the photograph in the previous slide, or about the Sarkari Babus, but the sector is really very huge. The NGOs have expanded a lot in India. There are many NGOs which are homegrown and have huge budgets and offer also good starting salaries to people aspiring to work on the field. Then a lot of tech companies like Meta, Amazon, Uber, they're hiring policy advisors to advise them on policy related matters. And big seasoned strategy consulting firms like the McKinsey, um, they have also gotten into doing policy related work. And so, for example, McKinsey is responsible for working on Andhra Pradesh new capital city in Amravati. And government is also increasingly depending on think tanks and consultancies. So essentially, to drive home the point that in this colorful slide, what you see is that there are at least 7 to 8 different types of jobs or careers within public policy or within development sector. So it is no longer, oh, I'm doing this degree, so I'll go on to the field and I will become a jhola wala and I will just, work on the field. Those are not the only kinds of jobs in the development sector. There are lots of other jobs with the public sector, that is with the government and with the NGOs and with multilaterals or international NGOs. There are also now a lot of consulting organizations which are working on development sector. These are international consulting organizations like the one I work for, and also some homegrown consulting organizations. A lot of people are also enchanted by intellectual questions when they come to development sector, and there are lots of research and advocacy firms which look into them. Then activism is another form of trying to bring an impact. Also, as I was speaking before, there are lots of private sector organizations which are increasingly interested in working on public policy. So within corporates, there is almost every big company today has a CSR division, and now increasingly a diversity division. And tech firms, big firms like Uber, Meta, they're all looking for policy advisors and researchers, because increasingly tech is interacting with people so much. So what I want to like briefly touch upon are, what do these different buckets mean, and what would a typical job in these different sort of sectors look like? So for example, when you think about civil services, I guess a lot of you might have heard about IAS, but there are also like other avenues within the civil services which you can do, which you can, there are different competitive exams that you can write to become a career civil servant. By a career civil servant, I mean that you are there for life. So it's your career is to be a civil servant, and then you rise up within the government as part of the government. Here, although the entry is competitive, this job comes with high social prestige, and there's a diverse set of exposure. So you get exposed to the field, but you also get exposed to broad debates, big ideas, and you ultimately are involved very, very closely with formulation of policy. Starting salary for bureaucrats is typically around 50,000 per month, and it does get capped as you rise up the rank, but there are lots of perks in this role. The other big bucket of development sector jobs are the grassroots NGOs. Usually you need a relevant undergrad, but the great thing about the grassroots NGOs are that they give you a very good exposure to ground reality. So this sets you up for very, very solid exit options, both in terms of studying as well as in terms of taking up some other job. The entry for also these kind of jobs is relatively easy, although the starting salary is slightly low, but there are lots of big NGOs like Pradhan and Srishti which are willing to pay higher for good talent. The third bucket that I wanted to come to are the so-called international agencies. So by international agencies, I mean organizations like the World Bank, Asian Development Bank. They offer different fellowships, but also have full-time jobs. They also offer contractual jobs, and their entry is usually very, very structured. All these organizations have their own portal where you sign up to join them. They usually require a bachelor's and often require a master's in humanities, but and offer a great starting salary. But what is great, the best thing about these kind of jobs is that it gives you a very good bird's eye view of the scenario. So for example, when I was working with DFID in London and I was working as part of the education research team there, I knew exactly what is happening in Africa, what is happening in India, without even like visiting a lot of those contexts. So working with international agencies really gives you that holistic exposure. Moving on, there are lots of consulting organizations. There are international organizations like the Big Four are entering into this, but also homegrown organizations like Samagra and Satwa, which do not themselves implement projects, but they often support the government or multilateral organizations or large NGOs to make their program more effective. They usually prefer a bachelor's or a master's, and depending on how reputed the consulting organization is, the more competitive it gets. So often it helps to get a degree from a top university. The perk of being a part of the consulting organization is that it offers you great exposure to a breadth of problems. So for example, I work with a consulting organization, and one day I'm solving an education related problem, but the other day I'm solving a health related problem. So it really gives you, if you're somebody who likes to work on a diverse set of problems and issues, then consulting organizations can be a good option for you. They also offer great exit options, both in terms of studying and in terms of taking on some other jobs. And depending on the organization, the starting salary is often quite competitive, and it's similar to what you would get in a, it's around 80% of what you would get in a good private firm, I would say. Moving on, research and advocacy, again, it's a huge sort of bucket. And what they require is, for an entry salary there, they usually require a relevant research related undergrad or some research orientation, like if you've written a paper or something like that, that is often required. There are lots of think tanks in the space, but also now increasingly large foundations have started entering into research and advocacy space. And the great perk with this sort of bucket is that it offers you a pathway for a PhD, especially for those who are research oriented. And the starting salary really, because this think tank space is also very, very diverse. So starting salary could start from somewhere around 40,000-50,000, but really goes up to around 1 lakh or more. Another interesting option for young people like you are the fellowships. You might or might not have heard about different fellowships, but in today's day and age, there almost every state in India is offering a CM fellowship, where you, for instance, work directly with the CM's office. There are also like other related fellowships like the LAMP fellowship, where you work with an MP, and so on and so forth. There are different fellowships which plant young people like you at different sort of within different parts of the government, so that you can become a part of the government, but for a very short period of time, while drawing a decent salary and without having to write the exam. So it's a great option for young people like you who want to get exposure to the development sector, but aren't really sure how to go about it. So you don't want to commit to writing the civil services examination, but you really want to get a taste of how governments work. Then this is a great option for you. I think what is very, very important to also state here is that it's not like if I start working with a grassroots organization, I can no longer work with a research and advocacy organization, or I can no longer work with an international organization. What is very, very important for what I really want to share with you is that unlike the private sector, the development sector in general is very fluid. So you can always start working with a grassroots organization and go up and write the civil services examination, or start working with the consulting organization, or vice versa. So when I'm presenting these different buckets, you should really see them as sort of different options that you can have, which you can add to your bouquet of your career. So you don't have to necessarily stick to one. You can always do a little bit of this and a little bit of that over the course of your career. I see that some questions have started coming into the chat box. I'll come to those questions towards the end of the session. Moving on to the second part of the presentation, I really wanted to give you guys a glimpse of what are some of the options in public policy courses abroad, as well as in India. So starting with abroad, there are essentially 3 different kinds of degrees when we think about public policy, any development sector course abroad. One is a very, we call it the Master of Public Policy. It's literally in the name. So there is a Master of Public Policy. It's a generalist degree. If you are aware about the MBA, it's like the MBA, but for people who want to have a career where you're directly dealing with people, or you're directly impacting lives of people. An MPP degree is usually 1 to 2 years long, depending on what university or what geography you're doing it in. And it's really a very flexible degree in terms that you can apply to this degree without any experience, but you can also apply if you have a considerable years of work experience. For instance, at Oxford MPP, the average age of the class was 28 years, but we had, in my class, I had students who had no work experience. And then I also had some seasoned bureaucrats who came in with 12 and sometimes 13, 14 years of work experience. So unlike the MBA, where the amount of work experience kind of is monitored and it only admits people with a specific work experience, a Master of Public Policy degree tends to be much more flexible. In terms of the standardized tests that you have to write GRE is often a requirement for the US, but not really for the UK or other geographies. And for both US and UK, you will need to write a standard English exam like the IELTS or TOEFL. In addition to public policy, which is a generalist degree, there are lots of specialist degrees, which I've now put on this slide under the other master's degrees bucket. And these specialist degrees are like, masters in sustainability or masters in development studies. And they will also open up the kind of careers we were talking about previously. But these degrees tend to be much more focused on a topic. They also tend to be more research oriented and more specialist. Like, for example, their LSE offers so many degrees, like even within gender, right? So there's a degree which is gender and development, and there is a degree which is gender and environment. So within a niche also there can be other niches, and it really depends on you if you want to gain specialization in a field, and that's the degree for you to go to. These degrees are also typically pre-experienced, but again, like I was mentioning, for a policy degree, there is a lot of flexibility here as well. These degrees are 1 to 2 years long, again, depending on whether you're applying in the UK or the US. UK usually tends to be a 1-year master's, whereas US tends to be a 2-year master's. Now, if you are the kind who are ambitious like me, then you can always opt for a dual degree. A dual degree is essentially a mix of a lot of, like, 2 different degrees, and thereby this becomes a longer degree. So it's a 2 to 3 year degree, but you can get 2 degrees at once. So a very, very hit combination that people like to pursue is this combination of an MPP and an MBA. So you come out with both the degrees at the end of 2 to 3 years. Sometimes people also combine an MPP degree with a Master's of Law degree, sometimes an MPP degree with an environment degree. But it's all to say that there are lots of different combinations available out there in case you are interested in not 1, but 2 different kinds of subjects. And doing a dual degree can really also expand your career options because you're also getting a specialist degree, but also a generalist degree. Again, depending on the geography you're applying to, this will require, it might or might not require significant work experience. Because you're doing 2 degrees at once, you'll have to spend more time studying them. And GRE, GMAT is a requirement depending on what is the combination of dual degree that you're looking at. Great. Moving on, I wanted to deep dive a little bit on this MPP degree and demystify what an MPP degree is about. So here on the slide, what I'm presenting is a snapshot of the different expectations for an MPP degree or entry requirements for an MPP degree in the US, in the UK, and in Singapore. So as you can see on the screen, so in the US, the degree is typically 2 years long, but there are also a lot of now universities which have started offering a 1-year-long degree. US masters usually expects you to come in with some amount of work experience because these programs are very, very experiential and heavily rely on your past experience. US is a huge country, and so almost every university in the US offers an MPP. So there's a huge range from Harvard, Princeton, to a lot of other universities which offer a public policy degree. The US MPP also tends to be more quantitative oriented. So they require you to submit a GRE score in addition to a standardized language score like IELTS, TOEFL. And the US degree also tends to be slightly on the more expensive side. So a ballpark figure for your understanding would be that it usually requires like 60 lakhs per annum. And if it's 2 years, then it doubles up. But that's also to say that if you compare this with an MBA, an MPP is a very solid option for you to have an entry into global markets, global job markets, without really coughing up that kind of money that an MBA requires. So an MPP is like 2/3 of what an MBA would require, and really, like I just covered, has a huge range of career opportunities. In the UK, the MPP is usually a year long, It doesn't require experience, but like I was mentioning, if you have experience, it doesn't discourage you from applying. So it's a very flexible degree. Some of the universities, yeah, like the US, UK is also very well known for its universities, so Oxford, Cambridge, LSE, Reading, SOAS, Warwick. Again, to say that it's not just the Oxbridges, or it's not just the top 2 or 3 universities which offer this degree. There are a host and a range of universities in the UK that offer this degree for people who might feel, oh, my profile is not the best for Oxford or Cambridge. As compared to the US, the UK policy MPP program is likely less expensive. So it's a ballpark figure would be around 40 lakhs per year. And because that's just a year-long program, that's about the amount of money you have to pay in tuition fees for you to get the degree. Like the US, UK also has a lot of scholarship options. In fact, UK has slightly more scholarship options. A case is, for example, the Chevening Scholarship is pretty famous. It offers a lot of scholarships every year for Indian, South Asian, and African students who want to study in the UK for a 1-year master's degree. Interestingly, UK also offers a 2-year post-study work visa. So that really opens up a lot of options for you to stay back in the US. Similarly, stay back in the UK. Similarly, in the US, if it's a STEM designated MPP, then you get a 3-year work visa. If it is not, then you get a 2-year visa. Another popular destination that a lot of students ask us about is Singapore. Singapore is interesting because it's closer to home. It also has some really good universities, some of the best universities in Asia, like the NUS and NTU, and they have really good MPP programs. The other fascinating thing about Singapore is that it's slightly less expensive. In fact, it's quite comparable to what you would pay for an Indian MPP. So it's around 20 lakhs per annum. And the focus is on an Asia curriculum. And that an MPP there is recognized in India, but also can potentially open up doors for you for a global career. Moving on, I also wanted to touch base upon some of the public policy courses in India, because I know not everybody wants to go abroad. And so to say that there are lots of options within India as well. And again, here what I have done is I have basically the 3 different buckets of policy courses in India. One course which is very popular, one of the more conventional courses and also versatile, very well known in the Indian ecosystem, is the Master of Social Work. Srishti, who's on the call with us, did this program at TIS. But there are also like other universities in India which offer this, like Nirmal Niketan Delhi University. A master's in India often doesn't require work experience, but again, doesn't prejudice you if you have some work experience of a few years. This master degree is very research oriented, but also depending on the university you attend, it's very well recognized and accepted in the India development sector. So it really does open up a wide range of careers for you. Slowly but steadily, Indian universities have also started offering an MPP program. So TIS has an MPP. ISB has started offering an MPP, the Indian School of Public Policy, Azim Premji, IIM Bangalore, IRTS and NLS, they all have started offering MPP. It's a 1-year long, again, doesn't require work experience. And I wanted to like pause and just say that a lot of these universities have started offering an MPP program, mainly also because they see a need for having this education to solve the problems of today. So it's no longer the problems of the world today are no longer business problems, or they're no longer funding problems. They are really complicated problems. And that's also the reason why you see MPP as a degree really opening up in India and abroad. And a lot of universities really want students and young people like you to get this education so that they can be ready for a solid career ahead. In addition to like Master of Social Work or Public Policy, there are some other ways to, pathways to start working in the development sector. So for example, a master's in law, economics, politics, sociology, they're all kind of aligned, and they all will take you forward and really like position you well if you're looking for a job in the development sector. There are also like some unique programs like this development practice program at Ambedkar University. And there are also like a lot of fellowship offerings, which are academic fellowships, like the Young India Fellowship, which can open up pathways for you to work in the development sector. Now, in case you are interested in applying for any master's or public policy degree, I just have a small snapshot of the timelines. Now, if you want to start the program, let's say next year, then the programs usually start in fall, which is August. So August of 2024, if you want to start your program then it's important to bear in mind that the deadlines for application, like when you submit the entire material, really starts in October of this year. So if I want to get admitted next year and start next year, I will need to submit all the applications this year from October onwards, depending on the deadline. Now, if you're also interested in a scholarship, then the deadlines for scholarship are even more conservative. Your scholarship deadlines for an entry in the next year's program would start this year. So it's usually like a year before your program starts. And I'm saying this mainly because a lot of us, including me, they miss out on these scholarship deadlines simply because they are not they're not aware. Like nobody has told them that, scholarship deadline really start a year before you start your program. So always bear in mind what are the deadlines for the scholarship. So in case you're interested in starting the program next year, you must start with identifying the colleges and the courses that you want to go for before this entire cycle starts. So before August, that is July, and great if you want to do it even sooner. But so to say that, it's mainly to say that you need to start the process at least a year in advance, so that you can have a solid solid application. I also wanted to emphasize on the profile building bit. So basically, a lot of the universities, especially abroad, but also increasingly India, they don't really necessarily look at a score. So they don't just look at GMAT or GRE and then say, okay, I will take you, I will not take you. It's not like the JEE, or it's not like Delhi University or Mumbai University, where they look at a percentage and take you in. It is really, they look at your holistic profile, your profile as a whole, which is not just a score, but mainly it's a series of different essays that you write. And the essays are not academic essays in the sense that they ask you to write about, oh, what is your view on Gandhi, or what is your view on development? But those essays are really essays about your own personal life. So they will ask you things like, what was the biggest failure that you faced? Or why do you want to study this degree? And why do you want to study this degree now? Why do you want to come to my university to study this degree? So in order to answer those questions well, you will really need to demonstrate a passion for policy or a passion for development. And so it's never really too early to start preparing your profile in that direction. Because you can't say that, oh, I want to study policy because I attended a webinar last month, right? A lot of people attend a webinar, everybody's attending a webinar. So that is not a good enough explanation to give to universities when you're applying. So again, to stress the point that it's never too early to start preparing your profile, even though your application process really starts a year in advance. Similarly, for Indian universities, the deadlines are slightly more liberal. So your deadlines would start after October and a few months before the program starts. But having said that, the different universities have a different system and a different deadline. So it's always important. It's always like, I always give this tip to all my students, just maintain a spreadsheet or a table somewhere in your notebook where you are writing all the deadlines. Now, moving on, this is just really the last slide. And after that, I'll take all the questions. But I wanted to quickly give you an overview of how we can help you at the DreamGood project. There are three different kinds of broad support that we can provide. One is application support. And by this, I mean support if you are planning to apply in India or abroad. This can be something as simple as just getting on a call with us and trying to understand what college or a program is the best fit for you. But it could also be something very, very comprehensive where you want to help understand how is your profile shaping up, help us develop your profile better, like give you action points on that, and and get help in developing your essays for application. So that's on the, if you want to apply abroad or in India, that's how we can support you. In addition to that, both Srishti and I and other mentors that we have on the project have extensive experience writing and preparing for UPSC. So we also offer strategic support on UPSC and help people with guidance on what kind of exam should they be taking if they are interested in career civil services. How we also help them with their DAF assessment or the mock interview assessment. Also wanted to emphasize that Srishti and I, and also like other mentors with the DreamGood project, have extensive personal experience of both applying abroad and applying in India, as well as writing the UPSC. So everyone that we map with has already gone through this process, and it's not like we it's a cookie cutter one size fits all approach. It's every kind of advice that you get is really, really personalized for you. And in fact, in the Q&A that we'll open up in some time, I really would encourage you to ask detailed questions about your own profile so that we can also answer them to your satisfaction. The third bit is like career guidance. So if you are not sure what is this development sector all about, you're not sure what's a good fit for you, you're not sure about what you want to do, then you can just sign up with us for like just a short chat of 30 minutes where we can listen to you and hear your questions, answer your questions, and as needed, provide you advice or guidance which fits your career goals. So with that, I'll pause. And I hope that you could all hear me. But I'll just pause and pause with a special thanks to GradSquare for giving us this opportunity to really be engaging with all of you. It's a great experience to have so many people listening intently to you about careers in development sector and having so much passion to work for the people. Over to you, Varun.
Thank you so much, Garima. Thank you for the great presentation. So the session is now thrown open to the participants, guys. This is supposed to be an interactive session mostly. So anyone who has got any questions about public policy as a career, the field itself, the kind of work, doubts based on, when do you decide and how do you make a decision whether you want to or should be getting into the public sector or not, into the development sector or not, you can post that on the chat, and Garima and Srishti will be happy to take up your doubts right now.
Yeah.
I think there's one single doubt already, Garima, that if you want, you can address that.
Sure, I can address that. Varun, just to add that this is a personal appeal to everyone on the chat. This is a safe space. This is a confidential space. It can also post questions as anonymous, but I would really encourage you to ask questions which pertain to your own profile. Because between Srishti and me, we have really nearly worked with almost every organization and have gone to like some really good universities. So I would really encourage you to make the most of our time today and ask questions about your own profile. Like if you're not sure what university to apply to, you're not sure what should you be doing for profile building, just feel free to ask those questions in the chat box.
Also, we have given you access to your mics. So if you are bored of typing, then you can of course use your mics to voice your questions as well.
Yeah. And I'll also stop sharing and then maybe keep my video on so that yeah. Yes, you can see me. Super. So Paritosh, I can start with answering your question. But meanwhile, just please feel free to ask any other questions. So Paritosh has asked, how is policy making changing because of faster technological advancements? And what are the implications of this for future policymakers? So that's a great question, Paritosh. And a quick answer to that, in the context of careers in public policy, what I would say is that now everyone in the policy space is recognizing how technology is connected to people. And as technological innovations are getting more and more solidified in our daily lives, they are also realizing that there needs to be a advocacy, but there also needs to be some researcher within a technology company really thinking through the implications of technology on the public. And so what the implication of this for future policymakers is that you have to really very, very critically think about not only what is happening today, but because technology is changing very rapidly, what are the technological innovations that will come up tomorrow or day after, and what are its implication on the people, not just in terms of, oh yeah, of course your screen time is increasing, but like more bigger questions like inequity. So if AI comes in, then what is its implication, for instance, on job loss is a big question that concerns policymakers today. So the implications really then, just to summarize, would be to think critically and preempt some of the big implications on inequity, on job loss, on how people live their lives, on social welfare, both in terms of positive implications and negative implications from the technologies of today and future. Srishti, do you want to add anything on to that?
Yes, Garima. Thank you for the great presentation and also, addressing the question. I also think it's a brilliant question. And I think the government has realized the importance of what you are alluding to. And more specifically, you will see that the government is hiring a lot of consultants who have more experience than maybe a standard civil servant will have. So that has become common. And if you notice, if you guys are aware, the government has also started lateral entries, under which government recruits very specialized people, like someone who's an expert on road transport or someone who's an expert on cybersecurity. So in the recent lateral entry notification, you will notice that the government is specifically looking for a lot of people who have experience on the digital, front. So I think that is one way in which the government is responding. And from my own experience, I can tell you that, the government itself is also training its staff and officers very well on this. And a lot of policies have come in where at a smaller scale also we can engage different tech companies, AI companies, and I cannot reveal the details, but at my own level, we are working with, all the a few tech companies based in Bombay here to devise solutions. So I think it's a very interesting question, and you'll be happy to know that a lot is happening.
Paritosh, we hope that answered your question. Okay. Moving on to Sanjana's question. You're welcome, Paritosh. How important is the experience of working in an NGO or research assistant fellowship at with a member of parliament office important in making the college application look strong? And then she goes on to ask, is it mandatory? So again, a great question, Sanjana, and I'm so glad that you're asking this. The short answer to the second part, is it mandatory, is a no. Nothing really is mandatory when it comes to a strong application, and which goes back to what I was saying, that it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not like, acha, let's get like 6 months in a grassroots NGO, let's get 2 months with an MP, and that will make for a solid application. It's not really about that. It's about what are the things that excite you personally, and you should really chase those things. And if now working with an NGO at the grassroots level excites you, then so be it. But if working with a member of parliament fascinates you, and knowing how policy making is done at a parliamentary level, that excites you, then that is what you should be doing. But it is not mandatory to do both or either to have a strong application. Strong application is made of different components. And what really truly matters is what topics or questions are you passionate about, and how do you go about solving them? Either through grassroots involvement, or by sitting at a desk, or by working with an MP. Srishti, do you also want to comment on that?
I think I'll just build on the last bit that you mentioned. I think, Sinchana, it is very important to be able to highlight your. I'll be honest with you here that it's very important to be able to highlight your interest in a particular public policy area when you're applying for a master's in public policy, and especially at good colleges. I think good universities, from my experience and Garima's experience, we have seen they will always value if you have sustained interest in something, in a sub theme of public policy, and which may be through a fellowship, through an internship, or which can simply be through your volunteer experience, or if you have, say, done a BTech in civil engineering, and you are, say, passionate about one module that you had on GIS, and you did something on the sides about it. And if you are able to relate it with urban planning, then it will make for a more interesting application. Or similarly, if you have some publications to your name, like if you wrote some papers during your college or while you were working. So I think with fellowships, you are able to indicate that, oh, you have an interest in a particular area and you have pursued it. So which is why these fellowships look good. But there are different ways to indicate that in application. But I would say that it is very important to have a few things on your application that indicate your interest in a particular field.
Great. I'm happy to stay over to take more questions. So sorry everyone, there was a technical glitch at my end, and so the entire presentation got delayed. But if Srishti, you're also willing to stay, then we're happy to stay. However, for those who need to drop off, I will leave our email ID here for people who want to directly contact us for any questions regarding any questions or any services. Just feel free to drop us an email. Sri Vamsi has asked a question. I'll apply for Masters in Computer Science. What are the other activities or requirements that will build my profile, and how I can know about different scholarships, because I'm not aware of any of them. So that's a great question, especially the bit about scholarship, because it's not, that information is not readily available. Very quickly, on the Masters in Computer Science, because it's a very, very specialized master's, what will be the main requirement is that you need to show an academic potential to study computer science at a master's level. So this typically comes from having an undergrad degree in computer sciences. And even if you have that degree, what you can do is you can get some online certifications, or you can do coding projects, and you can get work experience that really demonstrates your passion, your interest, and mainly your aptitude in computer science. And that's a key requirement for even like if you're working, applying for a specialized degree, for example, in education, Masters of Education. What really helps, like Srishti was saying, is to demonstrate an interest and a passion for education. So that the second part of the question is, how can you know about different scholarships because you're not aware for any of them? So if you're not aware of any of them, the best source to be aware is to go to university websites. These are the universities that you're planning to apply to. And it would really help to just spend like 15-20 minutes on their website. A lot of the websites, especially for the US and UK universities, are very well set up. So it's very easy to navigate and find a scholarship section. And they often share what are the internal scholarships, that is the scholarships offered by the university, and external scholarships, that is other scholarships for outside of the university that you're eligible for. So that is the first step for you. I would also encourage you to just spend some time on LinkedIn and see what are the current students or alums who have done computer science, if they have received any scholarship and from where. A quick Google search can also help, but I would really encourage you to start from the university website and then perhaps attending some of their webinars. And you can also drop an email directly to the admissions committee of these schools and really ask them if they have any resources for scholarships. I hope that answered your question. For anybody who wants to drop off, you can just always, Srishti has just mentioned details, our email ID and a phone number for your reference. So you can call us, email us for your preference.
I think on the scholarship bit, I would just like to highlight that, having a mentor maybe helps. Frankly speaking, I have known Garima all my life, but my decision to apply for MPP or my, my ability to be like to get the scholarship was very much sort of influenced by her experience and her willingness to share her experience. So I just wanted to say that feel free to approach us. We are available through email, and we have also shared the contact number of our contact from GradSquare. We will be more than happy to help any of you, because we realize that scholarship may be very critical to many of you. And Garima and I can very confidently say that getting a scholarship for a course like MPP is a lot easier than any other course that you can think of. So yeah, I mean, it's a bold claim to make, but I will, still place it on record. So we are happy to help, because we are very passionate about attracting people to this sector, because we feel this sector is coming up in a way where people can, truly do good, contribute to a sector that they're passionate about, and at the same time have a remunerative job. Like, it's no longer a time when you cannot earn well enough in the sector. And a master's degree in MPP or other things that like sustainability or international development may be a great place to start. And we are surely happy to help. So feel free to contact us at any stage.
Absolutely, Srishti. I absolutely second that. In the interest of time, I'll move to another question that I received as a direct message. So someone's asking, hi, can you explain more on MPP in India from ISB or TIS? Which is better in India as compared to options available abroad? And what type of jobs can you expect from MPP from India after graduation? Srishti, do you want to take up the first part of this question about the MPP in India from ISB or TIS, since you are a TIS alumni?
For sure, Garima. So I think Garima rightly covered it in her presentation when she said that traditionally the people who were working in the development sector in India had a social work degree from India, because Tata Institute of Social Sciences is the oldest school of social work in Asia. And it has a very, very good course, very solid social work course. So that has traditionally been the degree which has been popular in India, but gradually a lot of specialized colleges for public policy are coming in. And for your interest in IIT and IIMs, I think their specialized degrees on public policy are also very interesting. They're again one-year courses. And if you look at their website, they also offer need-based, merit-based scholarships. So I think they are a great option. And recently, there has been two public policy schools dedicated to recently opened public policy schools in India, whose structure is more on the lines of international public policy. One is Indian School of Public Policy, and the other is Kautilya School of Public Policy. So I think slowly India is also having a lot of interesting homegrown MPP degrees. And for people who do not wish to look at an option abroad, I think one of these degrees may be interesting.
Thanks, Srishti. And to add to that, the only thing that I would add is that whether you go to an IIT, IIM, ISB or TIS, what really helps is to understand what is the reputation of that university in terms of the kind of jobs you want to do in the future. So for example, if you want to work in a research organization, or if you really want to work on the social development side of things, then TIS would be considered as a much sort of bigger, reputed, bigger brand than an ISB or an IIT or an IIM. However, if you're more interested in strategic consulting and providing more of a management consulting kind of support for NGOs or international NGOs, then an ISB degree which leverages a business background would be a better fit. So to the person who had asked me this question, what I would really, and then also asked a question on jobs to expect, what I would really encourage you to do is to, after this session, just sit back on with a blank sheet of paper and really think about what would your ideal job look like, and then work backwards and then look at the curriculum of the different MPPs at TIS and ISB, look at what are the schools known for, and see which one is a better fit for you. Hope that answered your question. Moving on to Sinchana's other question, that you're planning on pursuing masters in public policy in the US. What type of, which are some of the best schools offering the course? So Sinchana, I have an opinionated, perhaps a controversial answer to this, is that at Project DreamGood, we don't rely on rankings. So, and I will not draw a definitive list of what are the good schools, what are not the good schools. However, what I will tell you is that how should you understand what is your good school? So instead of going at, Harvard Business School or Harvard University is an Ivy League, I'm sure that policy course is the best course in the world. Instead of going down that route, what I would encourage you to do is, the best course is really the one that fits your requirements the most. So for example, I was very keen on going to UK for a Master of Public Policy because I am good with mathematics. I have an engineering background, but I don't have any sort of understanding of politics and politics and philosophy, which a policy degree in UK was offering me, and a policy degree in US was not offering me. So for me, the best school offering a policy degree would have been LSE, even if I had gotten into a Harvard. But ranking wise, Harvard is ranked higher. So if you are seriously planning on pursuing a master in public policy, again, I would encourage you to think about what do you want to get out of that degree, and then really do some more research about the program and help and then see what is a good fit for you. Honestly, almost every university in US is good, almost every university in the UK is good. So wherever you go will be good, but what you need to find is what is the best fit for you, like what will you take out of that program. Hope that answered your question. So should you want to add anything to that?
I think I fully agree. Like we showed in the PPT, that the sector is very diverse, and people from very different and diverse academic and professional backgrounds join this sector. So I think it will be helpful to look at one's own career trajectory and then decide on the college. Like Garima correctly pointed out that, she's from an engineering background and she wanted a course which had an element of, philosophy and politics in it. Similarly, some people may have a need for greater specialization based on, the kind of sector that they want to join, and which is why some, a course which is not so highly ranked may also be a good fit because it is providing them the required skill sets. So I think the choice of college should heavily depend on your own profile. It will also help you improve your chances of admission, to be honest. So yeah, I think please bear in mind your own profile, your own career trajectory while selecting a college, and not just the rank.
Yeah, and if anybody tells you that they know the best school offering MPP, then don't listen to them. You will really need to, I mean, that's the hard way, but you'll have to do some research. And like Srishti mentioned, really find someone who can guide you in the process, someone who's gone through the process and can give you really authentic advice. I've received another direct message. I'm going to read this out loud. I would like to know if a master's degree is necessary to get into the field of public policy, or is there any other means as well to get into the field? So that's a great question. And the short answer is that it's not necessary. However, the development sector really is one, knowledge dependent, and really thrives on signaling, because you're working with the government clients and you really need to show what kind of skill set you bring on the table. So having a master's degree, whether it's in public policy or another specialized master's or any other master's degree, really goes a long way. Having said that, I would again say that I don't want to give a generalized answer, because it really depends on what kind of jobs you're looking for. So for example, while Srishti and I were preparing for this presentation, we had looked for some job openings and Meta, and none of them required a master's degree. I mean, it was preferred, but none of them really required a master's degree. So these are like the new tech firms which really need work experience, and they would prefer work experience rather than degree. However, more conventional organizations, especially the multilaterals and the international consulting organizations, they do prefer candidates who have a master's degree. And so what happens is people often have 2 master's degrees, or sometimes have a PhD, and they're also like back working in the sector. It's not a requirement, but really definitely helps to get a master's degree, but definitely not a requirement to do an MPP. You can do any degree that fits your career goals and helps you, which you're curious to know more about. Okay. I have another DM, so I'm just going to take this up. This is a follow-up question. Oh no, this is from Sinchana, follow-up question. You've previously worked in one of the big 4 in risk consulting and country risk analysis sector. How do you bridge that my profile with my interest in development sector? So that's a great question, Sinchana. I'm so glad that you're asking like really specific questions, because then we can give specific inputs. Now, I would like to ask you a counter question, and happy to like take this conversation up beyond this chat also. But if you are saying that you have an interest in development sector, like my or any admission committee's obvious question would be how? Like if you are saying you have an interest, then what have you done to demonstrate that interest? You could have come from a private sector background, but you could have, if you've done some volunteering on the side, or if you have some extracurricular activities which are related to development sector, or if you've done some online course. So you have done like 3 online courses, they're all about development sector. You're doing private sector job, but all you think about is development sector. So these are all ways to demonstrate your interest. In your case, what would also really help is that perhaps you can take, you can pivot into a career which is at the cusp of consulting and public sector. So for example, you can join in a big 4, you can join the public sector practice for a year as you plan to apply. So that also goes a long way in signaling to the schools that you're interested in it. Having said that, I would, yeah, great. So you have worked with an NGO, you've worked with a fellowship, you have preparations for UPSC is also one of the reasons. So exactly, right? So what you need to do is really bring out these elements in your application. And that is why I was emphasizing on this personalized point, is that everybody's story is unique. And I don't want to say, oh, you go work with an MP or you have some grassroots NGO, but whatever you have done really speaks about your own life choices and your own life journey. And that needs to come across. So Sinchana, while you have a full-time 9-to-5 job in a big 4 and you're working in risk consulting and country risk analysis sector, we have real passion realized in answering some of the questions that you were working on with the NGO or with the MP fellowship. And I would really highlight those aspects if you're planning to apply to the US schools. Again, to say that schools, especially policy schools, are not sitting there to reject you. They're sitting there to accept you. So just give them enough reason, enough data points to accept you. They are some of the least judgmental people that you'll come across. So you just have to really share your life story and position it in a way that it brings out the best bits in the context of development. Srishti, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think I don't have too much to say, except that with your experience in risk consulting, I think you are already a good fit for a lot of multilateral institutions like the World Bank and so. So yeah, I mean, I do feel that from my experience at the bank, I think you may be very employable in international agencies. So you can maybe, while you are applying for MPP, look for a small consulting gig with one of these multilaterals. That might help.
Yeah, and happy to take forward this chat, Simchan, offline as well. Super, we look forward to it. I see the people who are still interested in listening to us. So I'm also happy to like stay on for another 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So if there are any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself or drop those questions in the chat box. You can also directly DM me in case you don't want me to reveal your name. That's completely fine.
I think, Garima, it might be interesting if you can briefly tell them about different kinds of jobs that you have done in this sector, and also a bit about maybe the YIF, because we couldn't cover it in the PPT.
Yeah, sure. And
I'd like to add to that question that Srishti asked, because I think that's a very interesting thing that people might be gaining a lot of perspective from, is that you're an engineer, right? So from engineering going into the development sector is not something that you see conventionally people doing. Most, I would say, most people don't do that. So what led to the realization? And I'm sure there are a lot of freshers who are sitting here from branches like engineering, from basic sciences, who are not yet sure what their career preferences are. So when you got the clarity, and what can help people get the same kind of clarity also, maybe if you can throw light on that.
yeah, so thanks for that question, Varun. That really just threw me back down the memory lane and makes me realize how old I am. but I would really I think it's very difficult to answer the question around clarity, because I feel like I'm still getting clarity on what I want to do. And that's perhaps the reason why, like Srishti was saying, I've tried out so many different job options. And I was also talking about how this sector is very fluid and very sort of accepting of you and the sort of mistakes that you make at different stages of your career. I think for me, I did an engineering primarily because I was good at mathematics and science. And in this country, especially from the kind of family background that I came from, if you're good at engineering and science, and if you don't want to memorize things, then you become an engineer, because then you can't become a doctor, because I was really terrible at memorizing body parts. So I became an engineer. I luckily got into a relatively good college. And I was getting decent grades, but I very quickly realized in my undergrad that I would be a terrible engineer because that field doesn't excite me. I can learn formulas and apply them and solve a problem, but it doesn't engage me creatively or fully. I was lucky to be part of a youth organization, and that's funnily also where Srishti and I met for the first time around 10 years back, where I realized that my true passion really lied in working on small or big problems which impact human lives. And machines engage with human lives, but don't really interact or solve those problems in the way that I wanted to solve them. So it was when I was part of this youth organization, and essentially, like, we were doing visits to orphanages, we were doing visits to old age homes, to drug de-addiction centers, to really sensitize youth about a lot of social problems in the society. That's when I got my first kick of working in a development sector setting, and realize, yeah, perhaps there's more to it that I enjoy, and I wanted to explore more of it. From that, during my undergrad, I started a small NGO on the side, and I was so much in love with the work that I was doing that I was I was really like then at that point doing engineering just for the sake of getting marks. And I knew that I don't want to be an engineer and only want to work in the development sector. And the pivotal moment or the moment of clarity really came to me when I had the option of studying for a management course versus studying at the Young India Fellowship, which was very new at that time. And I knew very clearly that the curriculum of the Young India Fellowship was definitely much more attractive than the curriculum of an MBA. And I don't know whether it was a good decision or a bad decision. I'm still debating that in my head. But that was one moment of clarity when I knew that I want to do the Young India Fellowship and I want to directly like use that opportunity to directly deep dive into development sector work. And at that time, I was really passionate about rural development. So the first job that I took up was around rural development and agriculture. So yeah, that's the short or the long answer to your question, Varun and Srishti. Srishti, would you like to talk about your experience of working within the government, but then also because you worked with the World Bank briefly, would you like to talk about how were these two settings different?
Garima, could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I was asking, would you like to talk about your experience of working within the government and then also compare it to your experience of working with the World Bank? It will be interesting for people to know how are these two, like they're both very, very aspirational jobs, but it'll be interesting for people to know how are they different.
For sure. So I think Garima and I had a similar trajectory, although I'm not an engineer. Like, my elder brother saved me from an engineering degree because he's an engineer and he realizes how big a scam it is, if I can say. So I did a normal maths honors from Hansraj College in Delhi University. And throughout my college years also, I was very active volunteering with NGOs and, I was heading the NSS unit of my college. So by the end of my 3 years, I was also very sure that I want to work in the development sector. And at that point, I chose to do a master's in social work. And interestingly, I had a job from Ernst & Young, and all of us were so clear that we want to be a part of this sector or solve problems, like Garima said, which directly impact, lives of people around us. That we did, we tried to find pathways into this sector. But I think my reason of entering the government was that I was looking for greater impact. I wanted to be in control of things, to be honest, because I realized from outside, you can only, make suggestions, you can present papers, and I'm not denigrating that by any stretch. All I'm saying is that being inside the government gives you, it's one of those rare jobs where you can have an idea and you can also implement it. So that is very attractive to me. That attracted me to the government, and that continues to be the charm for me. So I would say that is the biggest thing that appeals to me, and that is the thing that makes the government experience very different. That even when I was working at the World Bank, very briefly, we realized that the World Bank had the access at the highest level. They were, but at the end of the day, the decisions were being taken by government officials, by politicians, people who form the government. So I think that is the big distinction between working in government and working outside the government, that maybe that element of control lies with the government still, because, in India, or I think worldwide, government is still the biggest stakeholder in the development sector. I think the second difference between working in government versus outside would be, to be honest, the remuneration. I'll be very frank here again, that the remuneration that you get in the government is, I would say, lower as compared to what you can get in the development sector if you land jobs in, the big consulting firms or the international agencies. So I think one should be mindful of that while you have more social prestige, more, you have more power, so to say, in the government, maybe life in the non-governmental space gives you a better salary, maybe a better work-life balance also, because the government jobs are becoming very hectic. And finally, I would say that the World Bank job was very, very lucrative. Like I obviously know people who work in the Big Four and stuff, but while we were working on this presentation, we had like a slide which said that can you think of a job in the world which will give you a diplomatic visa and will give you a tax-free salary? So I think jobs in international agencies like the World Bank, like the UN, will give you very, very good experience, and will also give you these privileges where you will be on diplomatic visa. I mean, if you've ever had to deal with visa hassles in your life, you will understand the importance of it. And a good salary, and in many cases, it's tax-free. So I just wanted to share that very honestly, while I continue to love my job. But I think there are very good options outside, and international agencies such as World Bank are a great place.
Right. So it looks like that's the end of the questions. Garima, Srishti, do you have got any questions at your end on your chat?
No questions, but Varun, I would just like to take a minute
Sure, absolutely.
in reflecting what Srishti said and what I was saying. And I think as I reflect back on 10 years, there are two things that are salient and stand out. One is that no matter where you are coming from or what background you have, academically or otherwise, there is scope to work in the development sector, right? So you can start today and you can still aspire to have a thriving career in the development sector. And the second thing that is salient to us is that Srishti and I have, and the reason why I worked at so many places is also because I was exploring on my own. And Srishti and I, like both of us, are part of a generation where the guidance and counseling per se or social media was not so prevalent. So we didn't really have direct access to people to ask like simple questions like, oh, ये करने से क्या होगा, इसके लिए क्या चाहिए, मतलब those basic questions. So it's interesting that we are doing what we are doing now, but that has taken us many, many steps. So it always helps to seek guidance. I'm not saying you have to reach out to us, but it always feel free to reach out to people who you think can give you a perspective on their life or their career decisions. So on those two things, yeah, would like to conclude the session from our side.
Thank you so much, Garima. Thank you so much, Srishti, for the wonderful insights that you have provided to us, to me as well as to the participants who took the time out on a Saturday evening to join us. So thank you everyone for coming to the session as well. Hope it was helpful in providing some kind of clarity. And as Srishti and Garima have driven the point home several times during the session, that please reach out to them for any kind of questions or doubts, or if you want to avail the services, please reach out to them. Also, if you are planning to take up any of the examinations like GRE or GMAT, you can reach out to GradSquare. We help students prepare for such examinations as well. And the email ID and numbers had been shared before. I would request Rishi to once again share it on the chat before we conclude the session, so that if someone had missed that on the chat, they can make a note of it. Wait, I found the chat itself. Maybe I can do it. Yeah, there you go. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone for coming. And hope you all have a great weekend. And once again, thank you so much to both of you, Garima and Srishti. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Varun, really, for organizing all of this. And thank you everyone for maintaining patience and attention for so long. It's Saturday evening. I'm sure everyone has plans.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you.
Good night, guys. Good night.
Thanks, Varun.